Two vulnerable road users. Both benefit from separation from larger vehicles. Both use the same infrastructure. One gets automatic access to bus lanes across the UK. The other is systematically denied the same protection. Can you guess which is which?
Unite for what is right, fight against the wrong.
This is the story of how the UK transport policy created a hierarchy of vulnerability that puts politics before safety and ideology before evidence. Let's start with the basics. Road safety experts have long recognised something called the separation principle. Vulnerable road users, that's pedestrians, cyclists and motorcyclists, are safer when they're separated from larger, heavier vehicles. It's simple physics. When a 1500 kilo car hits a 200 kilogram motorcycle or an 80 kilogram cyclist, the outcome is predictable and devastating. So we create separated infrastructure, cycle lanes, bus lanes, dedicated paths, to keep vulnerable road users away from the general traffic. For cyclists, this principle is so accepted it's never questioned. Cyclists get default access to bus lanes across the UK because everyone agrees separation equals safety. But mention motorcycles and suddenly the same principle doesn't apply. Why is that? Let's look at who's actually more vulnerable using the government's own 2023 road user risk data. This shows fatalities per billion passenger miles, the official measure of vulnerability. Pedal cyclists have a fatality rate of 24 deaths per billion passenger miles. That's genuinely concerning and clearly justifies protective measures like automatic bus lane access. Motorcyclists have a fatality rate of 102 deaths per billion passenger miles. That's 4.25 times higher than for cyclists. So motorcyclists are statistically the most vulnerable road users on the UK roads. So if vulnerability justifies automatic bus lane access for cyclists, how can the same logic not apply for motorcycles, who are over 4 times more vulnerable per mile travelled? The government's own data proves that motorcyclists need protection even more urgently. Here's where it gets absurd. The Highway Code, government guidance and road safety strategies all recognise both cyclists and motorcyclists as vulnerable road users. The official definition doesn't distinguish between them. Transport for London's own Mayor's Transport Strategy explicitly calls for motorcycle access to bus lanes to end the inconsistency between highway authorities that causes unnecessary confusion and risk to motorcyclists. So even TfL recognises the double standard. Yet nationally we have a system where the cyclist can use any bus lane by default, but a motorcyclist travelling the same route faces a postcode lottery. In some boroughs they're welcome, in others they're criminals for using the same infrastructure. Let's look at what happens when motorcycles are actually allowed in bus lanes. TfL conducted extensive trials from 2009 to 2011. The result? They implemented blanket access across their 77-mile bus lane network. Edinburgh, Cardiff, Northern Ireland all allow motorcycles in bus lanes by default. Are their roads less safe? Are cyclists being mown down by rampaging bikers? Of course not. The separation principle works for everyone. When motorcycles are in bus lanes, they're not filtering between cars in general traffic lanes. They're visible, predictable and separated from the main danger, other motor vehicles. Of the 18 local authorities that responded to the DfT consultation, only 6 currently allow motorcycle access. Of those 6 with real experience, 4 support continuing the policy. That's 67% of councils with actual evidence supporting default access. So where does the opposition come from? Primarily, It comes from the cycling lobby groups, who have built an entire identity around being the good transport mode. They've positioned cycling as virtuous and motorcycling as somehow immoral. In their response to the Motorcycles in Bus Lanes consultation, Cycling UK literally stated they don't believe reducing congestion is a worthy policy goal. The London Cycling Campaign talks about motorcycles having no clarity as to why they should be viewed as a suitable mode of transport. This isn't about safety, it's about ideology. And here's the irony. Most motorcycle journeys would otherwise be made by a single occupancy car. Every bike in the bus lane potentially represents a car removed from the general traffic, reducing overall congestion and emissions. That should be celebrated, not opposed. What we have here is a systematic discrimination against one group of vulnerable road users, based not on evidence but on cultural prejudice. Imagine if we said cycling is generally good, but mountain biking is somehow problematic. The cycling community would be outraged. The transport hierarchy should be based on vulnerability and efficiency, not moral judgments about lifestyle choices. A person choosing 2 wheels over 4 should be supported whether they're pedalling or have an engine. But here's what really makes me angry about this double standard. Every motorcyclist forced to stay in general traffic lanes is at higher risk. We know separation saves lives, that's why we give it to cyclists automatically. The DFT's own admission was that they have no policy to encourage greater use of motorcycles. They literally rejected the proven safety measure because they don't want to be seen to be supporting motorcycling. That's putting politics before people's lives. When cycling infrastructure fails to protect a cyclist, there's outrage, and rightly so. When we deliberately deny protective infrastructure to motorcyclists, it's treated as acceptable policy. Where's the moral consistency? So this brings us back to the petition I raised as MAG's Director of Campaigns and Political Engagement. When I saw the DFT systematically discriminate against motorcyclists while protecting cyclists, I had to act. We're now well over 20,000 signatures, with just 10 days left to reach the 100,000 signature mark and trigger a parliamentary debate. This isn't just about motorcycles, it's about consistent application of safety principles. If separation protects cyclists, it protects motorcyclists. If vulnerability justifies infrastructure access, it should apply to the most vulnerable. We need cyclists to recognise this isn't about taking anything away from them, it's about extending the same protection they rightly enjoy to another group that needs it even more. Safety isn't a zero-sum game. If this video has made you think about the inconsistencies in UK transport policy, make sure you've watched my other videos in this series. The 98.4% that the DFT ignored and the 55+ trials that they pretend don't exist. Together they show the full scandal of how evidence and democracy were sacrificed for political ideology. Subscribe for more evidence-based analysis of transport policy. Share this video if you believe safety principles should be applied consistently, but please sign the petition because vulnerable road users deserve equal protection regardless of what powers their wheels. We have until August the 28th to get to 100,000 signatures. Every signature matters.
Facing inland towers, disconnected from our pain. With the fancy words and figures, it's us they can't contain. We demand a seat at the table, no more shadows in the light. We'll shout until they hear us, we'll stand up for our fight. Unite for what is right, our voice is clear and strong. When truth is pushed aside, we will sing the song.